Before we get into this special weekend edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98 for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. I heard it said one time, if America's economy has a circulatory system, railroads are the veins that keep it moving. Here in South Carolina, especially the upstate, rail helped build who we are, from peaches and textiles to today's advanced manufacturing economy. And Spartanburg earned the nickname Hub City for that very reason. In a recent column published in the South Carolina Daily Gazette, Justin Bradley, a former Spartanburg County councilman and a longtime resident of the upstate, wrote that rail is making a comeback with inland ports expanding, freight volumes climbing, and a major proposal that could reshape how goods move across the country. Justin joins us on our guest line. Welcome. How are you, sir?
Hey, Joey. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for your time. You wrote about a proposed merger between two rail giants, Norfolk Southern and Union Pacific. As I understand it, they're seeking approval for what would become America's first true end-to-end Transcontinental rail line. Before we get too involved in that proposed merger, let's take a minute, Justin, and talk about the big picture first. Why does rail still matter so much in a modern economy that seems dominated by highways and trucks?
Yeah, absolutely, Joey. And as you know, I love history. And so, if we go back 160 years, there was an idea to do a true transcontinental railway. And what it did back in the 1860s and leading into the beginning of the 20th century is it really allowed markets to open up. And so businesses, for example, here in South Carolina, whether it was textiles or whether it was peaches, they now had new markets across the country that they could use and have access to and be able to sell their products. And then we were able to receive products from other places, whether that was in-use products or whether that was the ability to get supplies in that businesses here could then use and turn those into something else that we could then sell out to the market. So it really fueled that industrial revolution that really helped to transform our entire economy throughout the 20th century. And as we now get into the future, Spartanburg especially has seen, and the upstate has seen, this tremendous resurgence in the ability to have advanced manufacturing here in our communities, whether it's companies like BMW or Michelin, and so many companies are wanting to come to our area specifically because what that has allowed us to do is utilize these older networks and modernize them and take what used to make Spartanburg so great with that Hub City moniker and be able to now use that advantage to help these companies that are coming in. And I can tell you that when I served on Spartanburg County Council, the number of companies that wanted to be in Spartanburg specifically because of that inland port, because it opened up tremendous opportunities for them to sell their products and to get supplies that they needed to ultimately make those products here in our community. It was just a tremendous asset to us. And it ultimately meant that we were able to have great paying jobs here in our community because of those companies wanting to come in.
Yeah. Justin, I grew up in Greer. My elementary school was Victor Elementary, right there by the railroad tracks that come through Greer. And so, trains is always an exciting part of the day when the train came through for a bunch of elementary school kids. And I got to say, I'd always heard of Spartanburg being referred to as Hub City. Do you know, until I read your article, I really didn't realize that it was because of our relationship with the rail lines.
That's right. I mean, it has truly been a essential part of Spartanburg's history, going all the way back to the late 1800s. It's really fascinating. And in the 1860s, there was a vision of having a transcontinental railroad, right, that would
Yeah.
take and connect the East Coast all the way out to the West Coast. It's why we had so much westward expansion that was able to happen because of those rail lines. But until today, and even through today, we've never actually had a transcontinental rail line, a company that's able to take freight all the way from the East Coast out to the West Coast and be able to efficiently help move that through one company, and that's what this merger potentially would do.
Yeah, my wife and I, back before Christmas, she had a coworker of hers getting married, and we traveled down to the Palm Beach, Florida area, and we went to the Flagler Museum and learned all about Henry Flagler and the role that he played. They have his actual rail car there beside his what was once his home, and that's how he traveled, of course. And boy, it is nice, wood paneling and all.
Yeah, it's amazing to see.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a bit then about this proposed merger. What makes an end-to-end merger? And you touched on it a minute ago. But what makes this merger between Norfolk Southern and Union Pacific different from maybe past rail consolidations?
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say, Joey, at the front end, ultimately federal regulators are going to have to look at this
Sure.
merger and look at all the criteria to make sure that it is ultimately best for the communities. But as I look at it, I see a tremendous amount of benefits. And the main one is providing that first transcontinental rail line that's going to allow companies, especially those here in South Carolina, like the companies in Spartanburg that are creating great jobs for our community, they're going to have access to markets out west. And that's going to do a number of things. One, it's going to allow them to more efficiently get the supplies, the items that they need from out west here, so that we can then manufacture the products here in South Carolina and create those jobs, and hopefully see expansion of those jobs here in the community. But it's also going to allow companies that are already here in South Carolina and companies that are looking to move here, it's going to give them access to those markets to be able to get their products more efficiently out west. And look, trucking is a fantastic system. I'm not against trucking, but we all look at the state of our roads and infrastructure here in South Carolina especially, and we know that adding more trucks to the road, which is really what's happened over the last 25, 26 years or so, has ultimately led to more strain on already reduced and struggling infrastructure that we have in our area. We already are moving tons of freight on rail. Being able to do that more efficiently and hopefully expand that is going to help. As I was researching this and taking a look at it, I came across a number that it would take so much more trucks on the road to be able to actually move that freight that we're currently doing by freight alone. Another 3.3 million roads on South Carolina, or million trucks on South Carolina roads. At the end of the day, we know our roads can't handle that. So we've got to have a more efficient way of helping our companies get their product here and also be able to get it out to those people who are buying them.
Yeah. Justin Bradley is our guest today, former Spartanburg County councilman. He's done a lot of research on how the rail system has affected the upstate and South Carolina in general. And Justin, at a time when just this week, Governor McMaster announced he's going to encourage the state legislature to spend an additional just over $1 billion on roads. And when we talk about infrastructure and we talk about the potholes and the bridge repairs, congestion, the use of freight, and look, I support the truckers as well. They play a vital role in our communities, in our economy. But the use of freight would help with those roads and potholes and bridge repairs, right?
That's right. I mean, ultimately, relying on just one method of moving those products is just going to create a lot more strain on our already strained infrastructure. You touched on it. We are continuing to have to spend more and more taxpayer dollars on our infrastructure, and the roads just can't handle that kind of continued strain. So, having another option, especially for all of those companies who have invested here in our community, to be able to get that product out, freight is a great option that ultimately is going to help the taxpayers too in that regard.
Yeah. I want to go back, Justin, and with me today, Justin Bradley, to something you mentioned just a minute ago about some of the specific materials that are transported via rail that could potentially become more affordable, decrease prices overall. For example, you use soda ash. It's a key ingredient used in glass production and other products. That could become more affordable, more accessible to our manufacturers in our areas. Talk with us about this and some of those other materials that you talked about and how that ultimately would affect the consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. So soda ash is a good example, right? So there are a lot of high production states like Wyoming out west that produce a lot of soda ash, and so it's a lot cheaper to get it from those states because there's just such an abundance of it. That soda ash is a key ingredient that's used for things like glass production and is used in other products that are manufactured, and so allowing companies to be able to get that cheaper allows them to be able to bring that in from out west. Currently, if without this merger, if you were to try to bring that in, that shipping is going to be a lot more expensive because you're going to have to pay for rail line changes from one rail line to another, and there's additional regulatory inspections and processes that go along with that transfer. So that makes that process a lot more efficient. There's other chemicals that are used by companies like BMW and Michelin that again are cheaper and produced out west. And would allow us to bring that in and again allow those companies to potentially expand their operations because they can do more of it more efficiently. Talking about the history for just a second, when we look back at the 1800s, part of the need for that expansion that occurred then was if you were a farmer and you were growing corn, it would cost you more to ship a bag of corn 200 miles to sell it than it would actually cost the bag of corn itself. And so, at the end of the day, trying to make these products more efficient and more affordable certainly helps those companies and opens up all of these new markets for companies in our area.
Yeah. Justin, quite often when people hear merger, they think about, these huge conglomerates and competition, potentially higher cost. You mentioned that there is a process, though, that sort of safeguards this. Talk with us about that, the review process, and kind of where we are in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a bipartisan federal regulator called the Surface Transportation Board in D.C., and they're in the process of reviewing this merger between the two companies. And at the end of the day, they're going to be looking at the process to figure out whether it's, allows for more competition, if it's going to stifle competition, what type of service that's going to provide to customers of these rail lines, what it means for things like safety and the broader economy. And so it will be a very thorough review process that the companies will go through. There's going to be public input and detailed economic analysis as part of that. So this is not going to be a process that's just going to, breeze through. And at the end of the day, I know the federal regulators will, certainly spend a lot of time doing thoughtful analysis on whether this deal ultimately is good for the economy. But as I said, what I see looking at this is a lot of tremendous opportunity that it creates for all of these companies that we work so hard to recruit to our area, and the companies that have grown up right here in the upstate.
Yeah. Justin, as we kind of wrap up here, kind of bottom line it for us. When you weigh manufacturing growth, infrastructure savings, safety, economic competitiveness, why do you believe this merger serves South Carolina's long-term interest?
Yeah, I think what it ultimately boils down to is really the true opportunity for our companies right here in the upstate to be able to get their products out to the market much more efficiently, and the ability for them to get the supplies that they need here. And at the end of the day, what that's going to lead to is hopefully a lot more good paying jobs for our community as a result of this.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we've talking about freight lines here and transporting goods and products here. As you are looking, though, at the railroad service in the area, there's been a lot of talk, too, about how the railroads could potentially ease up the congestion on our roads every day. I mean, 85 between Charlotte and Georgia, it can be a nightmare every morning. Is there any movement to potentially talk about railroad more as a transportation for people? I mean, we've heard about the bullet train supposedly going from Atlanta to Charlotte. Is that even on the radar? Could that potentially happen?
Joey, I haven't heard anything specific about that, but what I would say is, the opportunity for these companies, those kind of things do not come without cost, right?
Right.
And so being able to have companies that can ultimately make their costs more affordable and hopefully allow them to invest in modernizing our rail system. Our rail system, while it is a very active industry in terms of freight and providing that, hasn't done that for rail for transportation for people as much. I certainly would love to see that, and hopefully this will lead to more modernization of those as a resource for people.
Yeah, Justin Bradley, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you, and hey, we'll keep watching this, and hope you'll keep us informed. Maybe we will check back with you on an update down the road.
Absolutely, Joey. I appreciate it.
Sure thing. On our guest line, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette. Welcome and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. It seems like it's been forever since we've caught up.
It has been forever, Joey, especially in the world we live in. From day to day, it could seem like a million things happen, but Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and everybody listening. We're back at it. We've already, crossed the threshold of 2026, and man, the excitement didn't stop, did it? We had no time to kind of just take in the new year.
I'll tell you, it's been a busy time for sure. Things turned deadly yesterday morning in Minneapolis, and I'm sure, like all of us, you probably have watched some of the various video being circulated. What's your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts are people have got to stop thinking that they can go into battle with our law enforcement officers. And I watch these things unfold, and you're asking for a tragedy to happen. I was watching a video from yesterday where a young gentleman was jumping in front of one of the ICE vehicles, pushing on it like he could stop it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you're not Superman, you're not the Incredible Hulk, and it's icy, it's snowy. Who jumps in front of a vehicle, of any vehicle, thinking that, danger is not going to happen? I don't know the mentality of these rioters, where they are like literally putting their own lives and the lives of our law enforcement officers at risk for bad behavior. You're not going to stop what their mission, their job is. They're doing their job. Like, stand back. They're pushing on police. They're throwing stuff in front of them. It's always a tragedy when somebody loses their lives. But leaders like Tim Walz and other Democrat leaders, we see so many amount of Congress now stepping out and talking about this, saying go out there and protest.
Yeah.
Go out there and fight back. They're inciting, and honestly, I believe the blood is on their hands.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe it yesterday when the Governor Walz literally said it's your patriotic duty to protest the Trump administration after the shooting happened yesterday, I mean, is he not encouraging more trouble?
Obviously, that governor is completely out of touch. His patriotic duty was to protect the $9 billion of taxpayer money that he was entrusted to and the people he put within his cabinet. That was his patriotic duty.
Yeah.
So before he starts lecturing the rest of the world on what it means to be a good patriot, he better take a look at his own actions and reflect. So, Minnesota is a dumpster fire right now between the rioting, the fraud, and I honestly, I listened to J.D. Vance last night, and I obviously listened to the president. This is just the tip of it.
Yeah.
I mean, what they're going to find when it comes to these healthcare companies that they've opened, where the dollars are a lot bigger, and just across the country in various states that now they're pinpointing in on. I hope that we see a lot of arrests. I think these arrests have to come swiftly. And we have now got to start setting the level of consequence that unfortunately bad actors haven't seen during the years of the Biden administration, where everybody could get away with just everything and anything.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that Governor Walz has done is make the decision to not run for re-election, to drop out of that race. That's the only responsible thing he has done. Let's talk for a minute about the fraud. I mean, it's just crazy what we're seeing here. And for a young 23-year-old to uncover this. I mean, so from your standpoint, having been in the executive level of South Carolina government as lieutenant governor, and with me today, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evett, what can be done at the state level to prevent these types of things from happening?
So, it's oversight. Anytime the government is giving somebody money, I'm sure every single one of your listeners want to make sure that there's some kind of follow-up. And, we heard that in Minnesota. I listened to somebody that owned a daycare center that was just appalled because she said, I have people from the state walking in here all the time, looking at my records, looking at the conditions of the center. They come unannounced most times. That's why when everybody says, well, do you think this is just something that fell through the cracks, or were people just turning a blind eye? Here in South Carolina, we do have a lot of oversight. We have an amazing program called First Steps. And, First Steps has an overseeing body that looks and marks. And I can proudly tell people that I have gone and read at First Steps centers all over the state, and they have been filled with children, as they should have been. And I think this is just something for the public too. It was amazing when Nick Shirley was going around looking at these centers. He was talking to people that lived in the area.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, have you ever seen, I guess that's a good lesson for all of us. If you see a sign pop up somewhere for anything and you never see any activity, maybe it's a good thing to call in to one of the agencies and say, hey, is this really happening? And, it's kind of like after 9/11. If you see something, say something. And we ended up, stopping a whole lot of terrorist activity. Maybe that's just in general. And, I think back about being young a little, really, you couldn't do anything. I don't know about you, Joey, but if you did something bad down the block, by the time you got home, you were in trouble.
Yep.
Because everybody talked to each other, and you knew your neighbors, and you knew what was going on. And we have to get back to that time where neighbors are watching out for each other, that we're in it together. And we're not, it's not that I'm trying to tattle on your child. It's not like I'm just trying to tell you what I see. And if we all take a step back and I'm starting to sound like my mom, Joey, the good old days, where we all helped each other out. And it wasn't personal. It's because we all realized that when all of our kids did the right thing, it was good for all of us. When our neighborhoods were safe, that was good for all of us. When we were talking and communicating and working together, that's when we're strong, is when we're united.
Yeah. Well, it's just what a way to start 2026. And you know, I mean, there's so many things. We could spend hours just talking about what is happening in Minnesota and particularly around Minneapolis. I mean, in addition to what Nick Saylor's uncovered, I mean, you had the Hilton Hotel fiasco. I mean, you would think that people would be a little more sensitive to this kind of thing now, but you know, the guy walks in and asks, well, you know, I need 10 rooms, and you know, he's pulling up on his phone where they had more than 10 rooms available, and the guy says, no, we don't rent rooms to ICE. And I mean, just crazy stuff like that, things that you'd never think would happen in today's time.
Well, again, I think it's because there's never been consequences, and we've seen this on all different levels. You know, consequences are, you know, as a parent, what we do with our kids. You know, we've seen career criminals just walking in and out because they're, you know, especially in blue states where, you know, crime just didn't matter. It was a revolving door. And when you feel like you can do anything and get away with anything, people tend to do that, right?
Yeah.
Human nature. They're kind of pushing the limits. And that's something we have to stop. And I commend President Trump. He has said from the beginning that he would root out waste, fraud, and abuse. And I stand behind that 100%. You know, Joey, it's no secret to any of your listeners, I'm running for governor. It's a big part of my platform. We have to make sure that when citizens entrust us with their money, that we're doing everything we can to make sure it's going for exactly what they're saying it's going for, and we're using it in the most efficient and effective way.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy and doesn't look like it's going to get any better anytime soon. Let's talk about some South Carolina issues. Of course, the legislature back in session next week. What are some of the key issues you're going to be watching?
So, you know, I think, you know, we're going to have to continue to work on energy. We need to make sure that we are poised for the future, that we are keeping it affordable and reliable. You know, as always, working on our roads and bridges and transportation. You saw that the governor put out a statement in our executive budget. He'll be asking for $1.1 billion. And that's something, as a business person, I have tried to convey in my role as lieutenant governor, is that time is money. And, you know, this is, I think, the one thing that business people get really frustrated with when they're dealing with bureaucrats, is that if you are dealing with people who have always been in the government and they've never been here on the private sector, where that old adage, time is money, is reality for you, then you just don't understand it. And, you know, I couldn't have been more proud of the governor, because that is something I've been saying anytime I try to help businesses out within our cabinets when they have issues, is like, come on, everybody, let's realize that time is money. And the private sector doesn't have an ever-ending book.
Yeah.
So that is the whole theory behind really pumping money, and let's get everybody working on these roads. Roads are always going to be an issue. I try to tell people, a little tongue in cheek, it's like painting your house, right? You paint the first room and it looks great. And by the time you paint all the other rooms in the outside, you get back to the first room, it's time to paint it again.
Yep.
So roads it's a never ending project. Like keeping up with your home, but you know, we have got to stop congestion. We've got to make sure our bridges are safe. And, you know, you'll see a big level of commitment on that. I hope to see the fact that we get universal school choice finally done with, so parents can definitely guide the educational outcomes of their children. I think that's something you're going to see heavy. And we ended the year in tort reform.
Yeah.
And, you know, the president of the Senate, Thomas Alexander, Merle Smith, the Speaker of the House, the governor, and I, we all sat there and said, listen, we started something that people never thought would ever get addressed in the General Assembly, and it did. And all of us vowed that it would not end there.
Yeah.
That we would see that this last, you know, that we would continue to move the ball down the pike. We want to make sure that we are keeping South Carolinians safe if they are injured by no fault of their own. But we also want to make sure that we aren't hurting our businesses in the process. So, there is a balance. We got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. So I think you'll be seeing some of that happen this year also. So, Speaker Smith was at First Monday. I went and saw him. He was very optimistic. And I liked his message that there are a lot of positive things going on that will continue in the General Assembly, and that he was really happy to be able to work with the governor, and that we have made an environment where South Carolina could continue to grow, and we could all work together to make sure that the people of South Carolina were happy.
Yeah. Lieutenant Governor Pamela Abbott is our guest today. Let's just pause on tort reform, because that is an issue that we talked about a lot last year. And there was some progress there, but, business owners, bar and tavern, restaurant owners say that there's more work to be done. Are there any specifics on what you'd like to see happen there?
So we have to figure out a way to get more insurance companies back into our market, because, I can remember when I was on the private sector side, we went through a period of time where workers' comp agencies were, insurance companies were kind of moving out of the state. And I can remember them telling me, hey, you can grow in all the other states you're in, but you can't take on any more new premium here. And that's hard when you're a business owner. You're trying to grow, because that's the name of the game. So, there was some changes made then to where, insurance companies wanted to come back into the market. And let's face it, they stabilize. The more carriers you have, the more rates will stabilize or go down, because our competition is good. So, but we need to get the insurance companies to the table.
Yeah.
And they need to tell us what it exactly is within reason that they want to continue to stabilize rates here, to make it an environment that they're willing to play in. But, everybody likes to just villainize the attorneys. You can't just villainize them. Insurance companies have to sit down and get specific on what is giving them heartburn about our state. And that's something Speaker Smith talked about. And, we'd like to see this session insurance companies sit down at the table and try to tell us why they're having record years, and why rates are still going up. So, I think it's good never to villainize anybody, but to get everybody at the table to work together. And I think you'll see that this year.
Yeah. Lieutenant Governor Pamela Abbott, one more final question for you. I was speaking with Drew McKissick the other day, chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party. One of the items on his list, top of his list, is closing the primaries. And we've talked about this for a lot. Drew said something pretty interesting the other day when he said that if the legislature does not pass this year, that the party the executive committee recently passed a resolution. The party is ready to move forward with filing suit against the state. Do you think primaries that will get some action on this legislation this session?
Joey, I would hope so. I mean, what I tell people all the time is we got to get out and vote, right? Let's close our primaries. But the president really keyed in on this in his last election, is we have to make it too big to rig. Yeah. And he kept saying that over and over again. And by making it too big to rig, it means everybody needs to get out and vote. Get educated on who the people are that are running, because you got to have the resume to do the job. And so take a little time, because you're going to get exactly what you vote for. And we've seen that. You see that in blue states. I mean, we talked about it at the beginning of this segment with, corruption and, incompetence. And, we look at who you're electing, make sure that they have the ability to do the job and to do it well, and then get out there and vote, get involved. 13% is not acceptable. And at 13%, we can close our primaries. We can go to paper ballots. I'm willing to do whatever gives people motivated to actually get up off their couches, schedule it in, and get out and vote. June 9th is the primary. Mark it on your calendar today. They have 2 weeks ahead of time to vote with your ID at a polling location. There's no excuses that you can't get there and get it done.
Yeah. All good stuff. And yes, it is going to be a busy busy year, and we'll be right in there in the middle of it the whole time. Lieutenant Governor Pamela Abbott, always good to talk with you.
Take care, Joey. Always great to talk to you. I missed you guys. And again, Happy New Year. 2026 is going to be a great year.
That's it for this special weekend edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.